Good morning, fellow vagabonders. My cats are about to have a fight. It's 7 a.m. It's a power struggle between one of our newest cats and the one we got first. It's an orange female tabby and then a traditional tabby, whatever. It was kind of funny to watch. But anyways, I'm up rather early and it's just I couldn't sleep. Something was in my soul. I woke up this morning with a thought in my head: history repeats itself. But I wasn't thinking about grand history, like on a I shouldn't say grand history. I wasn't thinking of history on a grand scale. I was thinking individually. Consider the addict, because it's just easiest to go to. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to keep relating myself to everything. But that's what I thought of, is like you keep returning to the well. And it's with every vice. You know, you always seem to find your way back to it. And the only thing that really stops that completely, well, I shouldn't say completely, but definitely puts it on ice, is Christ. You know, we have so much going on in this world, and it is kind of crazy to think that the history does seem to be repeating itself. But the only history in of itself is just our memories and what we've written down. It's not tangible. It's not like I can go out and touch history. Like, touch it. I can make it, but it's not tangible. And so the only way that history actually matters or exists is through people. And I think over the course of some time, we've gotten way too far into the scope of, we're focusing on like people, and I mean people in the most general, broad sense. And the truth is that everybody is in a different struggle, a different fight. And sometimes you can tell that they care and they want to do something better. And other times you don't. Other times they don't want to. The thing is that the only way we get into a society where we are actually well put together is if we return to a Christian society. And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but it would be a lot better than this. You know, here I am renting, and I don't want to rent anymore. I want to have my own land. I want to have a farm. I work at a corporation, and I can't stand it because everybody always says you need to have a big picture. You need to consider the big picture. You know, when you're considering higher ups, consider the big picture. But then when you're on the ground and you're looking up, and you're looking up, you're looking around, and you're like, I'm pretty sure I got the big picture, but why isn't anything changing? And I've noticed that in a lot of places of business, with exception to like maybe family-owned ones, because you have more closer contact. And that's because the people that are on high, that quote-unquote own the family-owned business, are generally on the ground level, helping you, because they want to see their business flourish. Corporations are doomed to fail. Walmart's going to fail eventually. It will fail eventually. And all these mega... Oh, that's annoying. Sorry. You know, I really should just turn off the speaker, huh? I wasn't really listening to music anyways. But, throughout history, we were talking about civilizations, rising and falling. Now it's corporations. We're going to see corporations fail. And I think relatively soon. I hope not, considering I'm employed by one. But at the same time, maybe it's necessary. When the '08 crisis happened, the financial bubble, and it burst, and everybody was like, oh, they're too big to fail, too big to fail. I was wondering, later on in life, I wonder if they considered the individual, like, is the individual too big to fail? How many people lost everything because of that? And, I was relatively insulated. I was in the Air Force, so I didn't really think too much about it. And that probably was my downfall, because if I wasn't in the service, then and there being protected by the government, I probably would have a different outlook on things. But, when I got out, I had a big, rude awakening. Like, I was pretty institutionalized. Kind of still am. You're so used to being told what to do. Then when you're out, it's like, okay, now I got to do it on my own. And you're like, And then the way I was raised, obviously, like, I had adult figures around, but they weren't my parents. I never knew my dad. And my mom went off the deep end, in my later teen years. So, joining the military was awesome, at least in that respect, because, here's what you need to do, here's what you're going to do, and I don't really care if you know why you're doing it, but you need to do it. The only reason I left the service, well, I shouldn't say the only reason, I had multiple reasons. I wasn't the greatest airman. No, I was horrible. I think I had some good traits about me, but physical fitness, nah, that's not me. That's horrible, I know, because the Air Force's standard really wasn't that hard, but I could not for the life of me, that was the one thing I couldn't train myself to do. I don't know why. Chalk it up to laziness and just general malaise. But, anyways, what I was saying is that I was insulated from a lot of this stuff going on the outside. And it's just something in my heart of hearts is telling me that it's gonna come crashing down. I don't know when, so don't count me as some sort of Nostradamus individual. I mean, I can't see the future, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people feel roughly similar vibes, or they have similar thoughts and feelings that this can't sustain itself. I find myself, complaining about taxes a hell of a lot more than I remember anybody I remember growing up complaining about them. And it's like, it is kind of crazy when you really stop and think about it, right? Like, you, the individual, leftist or rightist, or on the right or on the left, I mean, you thought about that, right? Like, you work your job, and then you do your 40 hours. If you get paid, weekly or bi-weekly, you look at your check and you add it all up, and you're like, okay, I should have this much. But then you don't. And then you find out on the news, again, whether you're left or right, because I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not happy with how any of this has panned out so far. And under the Biden administration, obviously I wasn't very happy about that either, because it's like, I like having people come here, but I don't want to foot the bill for them. And I don't think anybody, left or right, should be footing the bill for people that come here illegally. I don't think that's crazy. I know it's not crazy. Because I went to Canada one time in my life, and I had to go through the customs border. This was before you needed a passport, and they were assholes. And looking back, I was like, oh, these guys are douchebags. But looking at it now, I'm like, kind of makes sense. You don't want some person showing up in your country, just like you don't want someone showing up at your door and saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and crash here for a couple of days. And then they're like, after they've been in there for a couple of days, they're like, all right, it's time for you to go. And they're like, maybe not. You know? So there's that. And then there's the Trump thing, which, you know, to be fair, we're talking about this Epstein stuff that's been going on for a hot minute. Trump knew about it then, too. He knew about it in 2016 when he got elected. And basically everybody knew about it. Hillary Clinton knew about it. Like, members of Congress knew about it. The Senate knew about it. The Supreme Court probably knew about it. So you start to see how this is how I relate it to a corporation. All those people that I just mentioned are so far removed. They're not removed from reality. Like, it's not that they don't have a grasp on reality. It's their perception is skewed. And it's skewed because they're insulated. Kind of like I was insulated because I was in the Air Force. Does that make sense? Like, so the housing crisis didn't bother me as much because I had base housing, so I could live on base. You know, and I was married at the time. So I was kind of insulated from all of that. And I think that's the thing, is that a lot of them are just insulated. They have more barriers to prevent, you know, what's happening out here to affect them. And it's the same with corporations. People think about corporations. Oh, I think the door's ready to come inside. Hold that thought. Come on. Good boy. That dog is 16 years old. Can you believe that? Not a sponsor. But, so, you know, yeah, anyways, what I was saying is that corporations, like governments, are so far removed from the actual product itself. So, like I said, consider Walmart. You have Walmarts all over the place. There are some that are nice. There are some that are well ran. And then there are some that are just trash. Like, let's be real, trash. The people who go in there, trash. They're just not nice people. They're looking to get, you know, whatever they can for free, for as little as possible. And then you've got the customer service, or the people that work there. They're just as nasty as the customers themselves at times. And then you've got their management team, which doesn't really know anything or care. And it's because it's bloated. You know, wherever you work, if you work for a big name, how many of those, like, how many positions do you think you could get rid of if you decided to own the place? Like, not decided, but let's say you had the opportunity to own a place. How many people would you just let go because you know that their position is worthless and that they don't do anything, and you know they don't? And you could go just to the district manager and they're just as oblivious, and their district, they're just oblivious. And it's because it's too big. It's literally too big. You know, the greatest success, I think, for any human civilization is small communities. You can have bigger metropolises. You can have metropolises for sure, but they should be primarily small local businesses. The more you get into the bigger business, like the bigger you get, the more the quality goes down. Like Tyson chicken. Does that really taste good to you? Like truthfully, like chicken patties and stuff, does it really taste good? Like, what if you bought a chicken breast yourself and did it? Wouldn't it taste it would probably taste better, right? Because you were involved with the quality. You were involved with the process. Tyson chicken, it's like, I don't know. Same with Ben and Jerry's. I like Ben and Jerry's, but is it really the best ice cream? Is it really worth $5 a pint? Like, I remember learning in school how to make ice cream, out of a Ziploc bag. And you could probably do the same yourself. And this comes back to that question. History tends to repeat itself. Well, what is happening on an individual level that we probably had seen before? And you could probably track it back to all those civilizations that fell. They were too comfortable. And I think that's where history is starting to repeat itself. But at this time, I think it's a little worse because we are really comfortable. Like, really comfortable. Consider 50 years ago? Let's see here, what year is it? It's 2026. Okay, so yeah, 50 years ago would have been 1976. 1976 was not super comfortable, but it also wasn't, like, terribly uncomfortable either. But I think we're getting to a point where a lot of us are starting to get terribly uncomfortable, and it's not because we don't have homes or things to pass by the time. I think it's because we're starting to realize that we're all becoming slaves to something. And I think it's a horrible mix of vice. Let's see here, what was I saying? We're becoming enslaved to something. Yeah. We're becoming enslaved to our vices, and we're also starting to become enslaved to something a little more nefarious. And I think it's on everybody's tongue, but they just don't want to say it. Again, look at the Epstein files. Think of how many more names are in that list. And let's just not consider the people the perpetrators. We know that they exist. We know they do. And we know that some of those prominent names, we know they're probably perpetrators. We should know that for sure, but they don't want to tell you that, because if they tell you that, then they lose all leverage and power, and people will revolt. I mean, imagine the crowd. Imagine the Democratic Party if they found out Obama was involved. Imagine the MAGA crowd if they found out Trump was involved. And I mean proven without a shadow of a doubt. Like, we know Epstein did it. Imagine if you had that kind of confidence that Obama and Trump did it and were a part of it. Or even just a local representative, left or right, it doesn't matter at this point. Because we're moving past these party things. And I think some people are starting to wake up to it. Not woke, but just starting to wake up to the fact that there are some things that we just really need to consider. And that we as people should really actually entertain the process of becoming more communal based, not city based. And the thing is like, I can't blame anybody really for moving to some of these big cities, because I too wanted to, I was kind of enamored with the big city life. I was so enthralled by the Beat generation of writers. I loved their ideas. Hold on. I shouldn't say I love their ideas, but I was attracted to their bohemian lifestyle. And then obviously, even when I was attracted to it, I knew there were some things in there that I was pretty like, that's a little weird, but just this kind of free, whatever, we're doing our thing. On the Road by Jack Kerouac was one of my favorite novels, and it was part of the motivation that got me into an RV. But like a lot of people, it's way different lived versus read. You know, the RV thing didn't pan out, and it's because I was foolish. There's really no other word for it. It was just foolish. Like I like just on a whim, I was like, I can do it. I can find a job and I can support myself and live in an RV park and everything will be great. It wasn't. It was terrible. I was bored. I wasn't bored, but I was drunk a good portion of the time, and I was broke. I could have used a lot of that money to have bought a farm already, but that's not what interested me, because I was solely looking out for myself. I wasn't thinking, well, what if I have kids? What if I have anything else? Man, these cats, love them, but they just want to put them outside and say, go climb a tree and leave the paper towels alone. Why? They're terrorists. That's all cats are terrorists. Like, these are the facts, and they're indisputable. But anyways, like I was saying, corporations and nations, we've gotten too big. And I think that's what happened. That's what happened to the British Empire. It was too big, and it collapsed on itself. The Roman Empire was too big. It collapsed on itself. The Mongol Empire was too big. It collapsed on itself. It would have. I mean, we all know it would have. Like, it was inevitable. The Japanese Empire collapsed on itself. Like, and now the American Empire is starting to collapse on itself. And a lot of us, I don't think, are ready to face that, because we have all this history that we keep looking back, this nostalgia of, oh, remember when. Yeah, well, that's gone already. You're 50 years too late. And so now the only thing left to do is an overhaul, really. I mean, you don't have to destroy the Constitution and do that. You don't have to, but that might happen. But we're all a little too busy worrying about what movie's coming out. How am I going to pay for groceries? How am I going to pay for my cell phone? What's happening on Twitter? I'm working two jobs or something like that. I'm not working 2 jobs, but I really need to. I probably should. But, or you have people out there that are working 2 jobs and they just simply don't have the time to consider it. And that's just reality. And that comes from being a little too comfortable. And that's because we really are luxurious in the fact that we can have a car. You can rent. I know it's crazy, and I'm not saying that we're lucky by any stretch of the imagination, but you can rent, you can have a car, you have access to groceries, you have access to basically any vice that you want, and all that's really required from you, that's, I guess you could say, required from you so you could live a comfortable life, is working 9 to 5 or just a typical 8-hour shift, and you can just pay your rent, pay whatever utilities you got, whatever money you got left, you can use it on your vices, and then you can just numb your way through. And I think that's what's happening to a lot of people, myself included. But since converting, I shouldn't say converting, but since I guess you say I'm converting to Catholicism. Catholicism is Christianity. I haven't fully understood why that. I haven't quite grasped how Protestants have just buried that fact that Jesus started that church in 33 AD. When he said, "This is my body," the Last Supper. I just don't know how you springboard past that. And then all the saints in between, and the popes, like these guys that actually got it all together. Like the canon, the Bible itself was originally 73 books, but then Martin Luther was like, no, and pulled out 7 of them, and that's how you had 66 books in the Protestant Bible. I always thought that was interesting. You know, I didn't know that fact, but I thought it was interesting that there are 66 books in the Protestant Bible, and there were 66 chapters in Isaiah, and that's how I remembered it. But it's just, it's crazy. It's wild right now. You know, you have corporations that are too big. They can't, they can't possibly quality control everything. It's just not feasible. And, with the nations like we have now that are all tied together through globalization, like you can't manage it all. And that comes back to what I was saying. History does tend to repeat itself. It's the hubris of man. It really is. We all make these crazy choices as individuals, like me in the RV, or the woman that, she's with somebody that she knows she shouldn't be, but she's going to do it anyways because she loves him and she knows she can change him. We all know that never works out. It's a tale as old as time, but yet you do it anyways. It's the same with the guy who's like, oh no, I love this woman. She'll keep it hush-hush. My wife doesn't need to know. My wife's a nag. She's blah, 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 blah. It's going to ruin your life. You already know that, but we do it anyways. Oh, I can control this. I got this. It's just people everywhere are telling me I have too much on my plate. You don't have the headspace for that. Like, you don't. But you do it anyways. Like... And like, even with this whole Epstein thing, like, it is kind of spooky because, in the Bible, there was societies built on that. Like, they just did it openly and brazenly. Like the Aztecs, they were like, hey, let's just slaughter some people, cut their hearts out right in front of everybody over the altar to that guy, and it'll be great. And we'll have harvest and everything like that. The kingdom of Dahomey, which I just found out about, which was responsible for 90%, if not all, of the Atlantic slave trade. They were just warring around and just like, yeah, screw it. Take you, and then we don't like you, stab. Just brutality. And they sold people. It's just... You start, and and they had ritualistic sacrifices too. And then you've got America, where it's like, it's sterile. They don't want you to talk about it, which is crazy, because it's like, even with the exceptions of rape, incest, and what was the other one? Mother's health. You're still killing a baby. And since Planned Parenthood's inception, I think, or maybe it was Roe v. Wade, it's been like 60 plus million. That's been about the average I've seen. Anywhere between 50 million to like 70 to 80 million babies have been aborted. That's a lot. And then you consider some states are like all the way until late term. Late term is the 7th, 8th, and 9th month, which I hope we all know that typical pregnancy is a 9-month process. Typical. So 7th, 8th, and 9th month, like if you look at an ultrasound, you see the baby. Like, it's not a peanut, or like what some people try to like disassociate themselves from, all the while not acknowledging that they were in that same boat. They just don't remember it because they weren't conscious at the time. And then that's what they use as the oh, it's okay, they're not conscious. And it's like, okay, so I guess people who are brain dead, we just go over there and just, who cares, they're not conscious. It's just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, so for centuries humans have been doing just heinous things, and when we do them in mass together, united as one, it gets real heinous. It gets real nasty. And I think that's where we're going. God willing, we don't. I I think there might be a reason why there are some people that are starting to ask questions about, going back to the faith. And I think it's because we're all starting to see something very similar, and that is the rampant evil that lies within all of us. Because make no mistake, you can sit here and say Biden was the worst and he's a horrible person, and I can't believe that he would do any of those things, and he opened the border and he did all this, he's just so bad. Or if you're, you know he also had allegations of, impropriety with his kid, and the diary got released, and then his son, like, he just let him go and do whatever. Okay, yeah. And then with Trump, oh, he's horrible, he's just a nasty person, he's a rapist, and he's definitely in the Epstein files, he did that. And the thing is that you are literally 2 or 3 decisions away from becoming the very monster that you are telling others, like telling other people about. Like, these stories that you talk about, these although to be fair, the paper towels on the floor are my fault, so I can't really get mad at the cats for it, but I still call them terrorists. Because if it weren't on the floor, it probably would be on the floor. If I put it somewhere they can get to it. So that's on me, really. But it's so frustrating. Anywho. Yeah, evil rests in all of our hearts. And only you really know what your vices are. I know what my vices are. But you have to look yourself in the mirror and see and acknowledge the fact that you can become that monster. Because Joe Biden, I'm sure, when he was like 10, 15 years old, I'm positive that his mindset was not, I'm going to grow up and I might go down in history as the worst president ever. And I doubt he thought to himself, you know what else? I'm going to be a staunch racist as well. Go and look up some of his old videos. Like, he was racist through and through. I mean, that's not okay, but again, the times. But you have to be able to tune yourself to that and understand that things were just different back then. But again, that's what happens when you have the luxury of comfort. You don't have to. You can just keep moving forward and stay numb. But the Lord didn't ask us to stay numb. The Lord said very clearly that this isn't going to be easy. It's not meant to be. And this is because the fall of Adam and Eve. And even when you look at that story, when you look at all the stories in the Bible, you can tell very clearly, because you're reading it and you're like, why would that person do that? Why would David say, go get that girl, Bathsheba, and bring her to me so I may be with her, so I may have sex with her, whatever. And then, after that, say, you know what? That Uriel guy, my greatest soldier, my greatest general, he's a great guy, but he's married to Bathsheba. I want Bathsheba, so kind of need him to go. Scale that down to your life. Have you ever looked at a woman and said, I'm going to have her, but you knew she had a boyfriend? Or vice versa for a female. Have you ever seen a man and thought to yourself, I want him and I'll figure it out? Or maybe a better example. Actually, no, that was a good example. Yeah, that works. It kind of goes both ways. I don't know as many women who would do that as far as like in that scenario. I mean, I think all people are capable of lying. But just consider, let's just pretend, okay? When you scale it down to that, you start to realize that you are capable of that kind of evil. Because it is evil regardless. I mean, we just think evil is gore and like just grotesque. Like, we think it's just this absolutely ugly thing. And it is to God. But when you come to us, it seems to be like there's a hierarchy. Like, people are like, I lied. Okay, that's evil. That's awful. You shouldn't lie. But you did. Or you have someone going on a tirade saying, I hate that person. They're so foolish. They're the worst. They can't figure it out. They don't know their head from their ass. They're just the worst people in the world, and I know it. That's evil. Spewing hate to somebody that is not even around. That's evil. But we still do it. And that's what I mean. When you stop and think about it, and you actually consider Jesus' teachings, like he says, anyone who looks at a woman with lust in his heart has already committed, or looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery in his heart. Anybody who calls somebody a fool, you are already like condemned, like paraphrasing. But so those are pretty heavy standards, but we keep pushing that away because we're like, no. Yes. The Bible is very strict and very, very pointed about what is wrong and what is right. But we all justify it. We all do, myself included. How many times have I justified alcohol? Like, it'll be just this one time. I'm okay. I still love the Lord, but I want this drink. Same with weed. Same with porn. All these vices. Same with lust for power. It's the same for adultery. It's the same for all of that. It all starts off with a whisper in our ear saying, "You surely won't die. Surely God wouldn't punish you if you mess up here. It's just small, right?" But history tends to repeat itself. Corporations and nations are too big, but it all stems from the same individual hubris. And that's why we see history repeat itself so frequently. It's because we'll never be able to get over that original sin. We just can't help ourselves. But there is always hope in the Lord, because the Lord gave us a blueprint, and then his son came and died on the cross for us. And not us as in this collective, no, you, me, her, my neighbor, Trump, Biden, Obama, Hitler, Mussolini, Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Thomas Massey, all these people, Marjorie Taylor Greene, every trans person. Jesus died for you. He died for everyone. You're not excluded from the club. And yet we still feel like we are. And it's because we hide behind our hubris. I think that's all I got for today. I've been up since 5:30, and I woke up and I went to bed at like 1. I don't even know why. I just couldn't sleep. And then the internet went out, which I assume was the Lord telling me, hey, it's time to go to bed. It's Ash Wednesday. So, but I hope you all have a blessed day. And just remember, God died for you. It wasn't an accident. It's not chance. He did that on purpose. He died purposefully, with intention, to cover our sins, past, present, and future. And that's the beauty of the Lord. And I think we would all be better served if we acknowledge that and start giving our lives to him fully. I hope you all have a blessed day, and thank you for watching.